Why was she always the one falling behind? The courtyard was silent except for boots on gravel and the clipped tone of an officer's voice echoing across the academy walls. Rows of cadets stood rigid at attention, their uniforms perfect, their weapons aligned, their breathing synchronized. All except one. Specialist Wren's fingers fumbled against the straps of her vest. She tried to tighten them, then loosen them, then tighten them again. Nothing sat right. The buckle slipped once more. Her heart sank when she heard the commander's boot stop directly in front of her. Commander Tempest's voice cut like a blade. "Your tactical vest is secured incorrectly. Again." The pause afterward was deliberate, heavy. Everyone in the courtyard heard it. Wren's face heated as she adjusted the strap, only making it worse. She could feel the eyes of her boring into her back, the silent judgment that always followed her. Someone snickered in the line behind. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. On paper, she was perfect. Her scores in military history, tactical theory, and weapon system schematics were among the highest in the class. She could dissect an enemy formation and predict its collapse in minutes. She could chart supply lines, design battlefield maneuvers, anticipate counterattacks. But the battlefield in her mind never matched the one under her feet. Her hands refused her commands. Her body betrayed her at every step. She could draw the schematics of an XR-7 rifle blindfolded, yet when it was in her grip she somehow held it wrong. She could detail every choke point of an urban layout, yet stumbled through the obstacle course as though she were blind. The paradox became her identity, brilliant, yet useless. That morning, as Commander Tempest moved down the line of cadets, Wren stared forward, her jaw locked. She heard the words that set the tone for the week. "Today begins your final assessment. Your performance will determine your field assignment, or whether you receive one at all." A murmur rippled through the line of cadets. For most of them, this was the culmination of years of training. For Wren, it sounded like the final nail. When the obstacle course began, Squad Delta vaulted forward. Their combat specialist cleared the first wall in a single fluid motion, rolled under barbed wire, graceful and swift. Quill maneuvered with mechanical efficiency, his breathing steady, controlled. Wren trailed behind, tripping over the rope crawl, landing hard in the mud. She scrambled up, her knees burning, vision swimming as the sun flared against her helmet visor. She forced her body to keep moving, but every attempt was clumsy, mistimed. By the time she stumbled across the finish line, Tactical Officer checked his stopwatch with theatrical slowness. 7 minutes 12 seconds, he barked. "Congratulations, a new record for mediocrity." Laughter followed, sharp and cruel. Didn't even lower his voice when he muttered, "Maybe they sent us a civilian infiltrator to test our patience." Smirked. Quill laughed outright. Wren kept her eyes forward. Her jaw clenched so tightly she tasted blood. That night in the privacy of her quarters, she spread combat manuals across her desk. She traced diagrams with trembling fingers, whispering the steps under her breath like prayers. Disassemble, reassemble, fire, clear, move, cover. She memorized until her eyes ached. Sleep came reluctantly, and when it did, it wasn't rest. It was fragments, white rooms, cold metal tables, voices speaking in code, gloved hands making notes. She saw flashes of symbols she couldn't comprehend, screens glowing with lines of numbers. She woke at 300, breath ragged, sweat soaking her shirt. A sharp sting at her nose, and when she pressed her palm to her face, she saw blood smeared across her skin. She staggered to the sink, washed it away, and only then noticed her other palm. Numbers scrawled in ink, her handwriting, sequences she didn't remember writing. She scrubbed them off, but the unease lingered. Something wasn't right, not with the academy, not with her inexplicable failures, and not with herself. The next morning brought firearms qualification. The XR-7 combat system gleamed on the table, familiar in every technical sense, foreign in her grasp. She picked it up, she knew its weight. She knew the proper way to chamber a round. She knew how the recoil would feel. But when she tried, her fingers refused precision. The cartridge slipped, the chamber jammed. Officer snapped, "Safety first, basic protocols." "Yes, sir," she muttered, cheeks burning. Around her, Squad Delta assembled their rifles flawlessly. The firing range lit up with clean bursts of accuracy. Targets dropped in neat succession. Wren's target remained nearly untouched. Her first 3 shots missed entirely. The 4th scraped the outer ring. By the end, her score was 34, barely half the minimum required. "I don't understand," she whispered, lowering her rifle. "I know how to do this." Ejected his magazine with a casual flick. 96. "Knowing and doing," he said coolly, "are different things. Some people just aren't meant for field work." The words landed like a strike she couldn't parry. At lunch, she sat alone, staring at food she couldn't taste. Commander Tempest entered, her presence commanding immediate silence. She scanned the hall, then walked directly to Wren's table. "Specialist." Wren sat, bracing herself. Tempest sat opposite her. "Your theoretical scores remain exceptional. You know this." Wren blinked, startled by the rare compliment. "Thank you, Commander." "Yet your practical performance remains abysmal," Tempest continued. Her tone wasn't cruel, only factual, but it cut all the same. "Your mind clearly understands what must be done. Your body refuses to comply. The Academy has invested heavily in your training. The return has been minimal." Wren swallowed hard. "Are you suggesting I withdraw?" Tempest studied her, eyes sharp but not unkind. "I'm suggesting you find what's blocking you and eliminate it. You have 1 week." The commander stood, leaving her in silence. But not entirely. From across the hall's gaze lingered. Later, she slid onto the bench across from Wren. "There's a rumor," whispered. "General is coming to observe final assessments." Wren frowned. The general, why would he care about cadet evaluations? Shrugged, "No idea, but something big is happening. Extra security everywhere. Restricted areas sealed off. Quill thinks it's connected to the Eastern Coalition skirmishes." At those words, pain stabbed behind Wren's eyes. A flash symbols on a glowing screen, a voice saying, "Asset preparation complete." Then it was gone. "You okay?" asked. "Fine," Wren forced out, "just tired." That night the dreams returned stronger. She wasn't fumbling this time. She was perfect. Her body moved like a weapon, executing flawless maneuvers while masked observers recorded every motion. One spoke into a recorder. "Subject shows optimal response. Recommend advancement to Phase 3 conditioning." Wren jolted awake, sheets damp with sweat. Her tablet glowed with an alert. 600 hours, advanced combat simulation, mandatory. 3 weeks blurred past in tension and unease. Squad Delta assembled in the simulation chamber for their final assessment. The air was heavy, the silence electric. Commander Tempest entered, but she wasn't alone. A man followed. Stern-faced, sharp-eyed, his insignia gleamed, "General." The cadet stiffened. This wasn't normal. "General will be observing," Tempest announced. Even her voice carried an unusual weight. The briefing screen lit up with an urban combat scenario. Wren's pulse quickened. Something about the layout stirred recognition. A place she'd never been, yet knew. "Commence simulation," Tempest ordered. Squad Delta surged forward. Wren tried to follow, but every corner disoriented her. She lagged behind, her shots wide, her movements clumsy. "You're going to get us killed," snarled. "Stay back and try not to fail so spectacularly." Wren ignored him. The blueprints on the simulation walls tugged at her consciousness. They weren't random. They were specific. She pressed her hand to one wall, shuddering at the sense of. From above, General watched, his gaze locked not on the squad but on her. "Neural suppression still holding," he murmured to an aide. "Impressive longevity." Wren stumbled onward. She couldn't shake it. the feeling she knew this place, not as simulation but as reality. And beneath it all, a question pulsed like a heartbeat. Why was she failing every drill, yet dreaming as though she had never failed at all? What happens when the walls of training collapse and the bullets turn real? The alarms came first, shrill, jarring, unmistakably different from any drill. Red lights flared across the chamber, and the simulated buildings shimmered, then dissolved. The illusion peeled away, exposing steel beams and reinforced corridors of the academy beneath. Security breach. Hostile forces detected. This is not a drill. The voice over comms was flat, urgent, stripped of rehearsal. For a breathless moment, the cadets stood frozen, caught between simulation and reality. Then the first volley of live gunfire cracked through the air. Sparks showered from a console above as masked figures in dark tactical gear stormed the newly exposed entryway. Cursed, diving for cover, dragged Quill behind a pillar, returning fire with sharp bursts. Ren stood alone in the open, staring. This wasn't supposed to happen. Her instincts screamed to move, but her body locked. Around her, chaos erupted. Cadets fell, crying out in pain. Tempest's voice cut through the comms, sharp and commanding. All units fall back to defensive positions. Repeat, this is an actual incursion. Ren ducked behind a shattered pillar just as bullets shredded the wall she'd been standing against. Her heart hammered, her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold her rifle. This wasn't practice anymore. The air reeked of smoke and blood. Across the atrium, she spotted Tempest pinned down with a group of younger cadets. The commander's arm jerked as a round tore through her shoulder. Still, Tempest held her ground, shielding the recruits. Squad Delta tried to push forward but were caught in a crossfire. Quill shouted coordinates, barked orders, laid down suppressive fire. None of it was enough. Ren pressed her back harder against cover, paralyzed. She watched helplessly as Tempest's position was overwhelmed. The commander's eyes locked on hers across the atrium. For an instant, the noise seemed to fade, the world narrowing to just that gaze, direct, unyielding. Then Tempest shouted, not to the squad, not to the cadets, but to her. Execute protocol heliotrope. The words thundered through her mind like an electric surge. Ren gasped, the world tilting. A rush of clarity swept over her. Her vision tunneled, then sharpened into crystalline focus. The trembling in her hands vanished. Her heartbeat slowed, each thud steady, purposeful. Something had been unlocked. Her body moved before her thoughts could catch up. She vaulted over her cover with fluid grace, a motion she had never achieved in months of training. A masked attacker swung his weapon toward her. She disarmed him in one seamless strike, spun the rifle in her grip, and fired twice. 2 enemies dropped before they could react. A voice slipped from her lips, cold, efficient, alien yet her own. Asset activated. Mission parameters requested. She froze. That hadn't sounded like her. But there was no time to question it. Her body surged forward, movements precise, every motion calculated and executed with surgical perfection. She anticipated enemy positions before they emerged. She used the environment, ricochets, shattered debris, the angle of the stairwell railings, as weapons. Squad Delta watched in stunned silence. "What is happening?" whispered, eyes wide as Ren moved like a ghost through the battlefield. She didn't hear him. She couldn't. The world had slowed. Each target appeared as though marked by invisible coordinates. Each angle, each strike, each bullet traced a path in her mind before her body followed flawlessly. For the first time since she had arrived at the academy, she wasn't guessing. She wasn't fumbling. She wasn't failing. She was certain. She reached Tempest, clearing the enemies surrounding her with ruthless efficiency. Her rifle barked in sharp, exact bursts, never wasting a round. When the last body fell, silence seemed to echo louder than the gunfire. Tempest managed, blood soaking her uniform as she clutched her wounded shoulder. "Area secure, Commander," Ren said automatically, her voice clipped, her stance perfect. Extraction route identified, requesting permission to proceed with evacuation. Tempest's eyes widened. She nodded almost warily. Granted. Ren turned to the cadets, organizing them into a defensive formation as though she'd been doing it all her life. Follow exactly. Maintain intervals of 2 meters. Weapons ready. Prioritize movement over engagement. Her voice carried authority, unshakable, absolute. The group moved. Ren led them through side corridors, avoiding contact, neutralizing threats with swift, brutal precision when escape wasn't possible. She navigated the academy like a place she had memorized long ago, through maintenance shafts, security bypasses, routes never marked on their training maps. "How do you know these?" a cadet whispered, his voice trembling. For the first time, doubt flickered in her perfect rhythm. How did she know? Images stuttered through her mind. Blueprints under blue light, memorization drills she didn't recall, coded access sequences embedded like scars. "Tactical advantage," she answered flatly, forcing the fragments away. "Maintain formation." They reached the secondary command center. 3 attackers were forcing the doors, their weapons cutting sparks through reinforced steel. Ren moved alone, striking with a precision that bordered on inhuman. 15 seconds later, the hall was silent. All 3 lay neutralized. Inside, and Quill stared as she entered. Quill's voice cracked. What happened to you?" "Secure this position," Ren ordered, ignoring the question. "Commander Tempest is wounded but stable. These cadets need medical attention." Her mind fed her data she hadn't asked for. 14 hostiles neutralized, 12 remaining. Primary objective location, Command Center Alpha. Probability of capture, high. "I need to reach Command Alpha," she said, voice flat. "That's suicide," shot back. "The central section is overrun." Ren's eyes flickered with data. Negative. Eastern corridor remains viable. 78% probability of successful infiltration. And Quill exchanged a glance. This wasn't the they knew. "I'll go with you," a voice said behind her. His armor was dented, blood on his gear. He gripped his weapon tightly, eyes steady. "Unnecessary," Ren replied without hesitation. "Your combat effectiveness is compromised by fatigue and injuries to your left arm and torso." "Froze, how could you possibly know that?" Ren blinked. She hadn't consciously observed him, hadn't calculated his condition. The knowledge had simply appeared. "I just do." He squared his shoulders. "I'm coming anyway. Whatever's happening to you, 2 guns are better than 1. She calculated, then gave a curt nod. "Maintain 3-meter separation. Follow my lead precisely." Together they moved. Through corridors Ren navigated with uncanny certainty, bypassing locks with coded gestures knew should have been impossible. "Where did you learn this?" he asked as she slid them through a sealed door. "I don't know." Her voice faltered. 2 identities wrestled inside her, the clumsy cadet who tripped over rope crawls and the perfect operator slicing through enemies like shadows. Both were her. Neither made sense. They closed on Command Alpha. Ren's senses heightened, threat assessments unfolding in layers before her eyes. She signaled to flank. They burst into the command chamber. Inside, General stood cornered with 3 guards. Opposite him, 5 attackers, led by a woman with a scar tracing her cheek. She held a device Ren instantly recognized, though she didn't know how, as a neural disruptor. "The package isn't here," the woman hissed at. "Tell us where you've moved the sleeper assets, or extraction will be less pleasant." "You're too late," replied calmly. "Protocol heliotrope has already been initiated." Her eyes narrowed. "1 activation doesn't matter. There are dozens more. Tell us where." Ren froze. "Dozens more." She signaled, then moved. 2 enemies dropped in her first assault, cut down a 3rd. The woman reacted instantly, raising the disruptor. Her eyes locked on Ren. Sleeper agent identified, she declared. Her voice dripped with satisfaction. Protocol Sunflower override. The words slammed into Wren's mind like a physical blow. Her body seized, movements faltering. Her vision blurred, conflicting commands tearing at her consciousness. Part of her wanted to obey, drop her weapon, surrender, comply. Asset, the woman said coldly. Stand down and prepare for extraction. Wren's hands shook. Her knees buckled. Something deep inside screamed to obey. But something else, something stubborn, raw, human, pushed back. Her lips trembled, then steadied. I am not your asset. The woman repeated the phrase, louder, sharper. Protocol Sunflower override, comply. Wren raised her weapon, her voice cutting through the fog. Protocol rejected. She fired, the woman collapsed, the others followed in seconds. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of smoke and ragged breathing. General stared at her, astonishment flickering through his otherwise impenetrable expression. Specialist, he said slowly. Your resistance, that wasn't supposed to be possible. Wren's voice cracked, both fury and fear lacing it. What did you do to me? What am I? Before could answer, reinforcements poured in, Commander Tempest among them, her arm bound in a sling. The facility was secure again, but nothing about Wren was secure anymore. And somewhere in the fragments of her mind, the words lingered, echoing, dozens more. Who are you when your reflection no longer belongs to you? The elevator doors sealed with a metallic sigh, plunging them into dim light. Wren caught her reflection in the polished steel. The face staring back looked like hers, but different. Her eyes seemed sharper, colder, calculating in ways she didn't remember. Even the way she stood felt foreign, her spine, her posture predatory. She forced herself to breathe. In, out, calm, but calm didn't come. General stood beside Commander Tempest, hands clasped neatly behind his back. His uniform was immaculate, his expression carved from stone. And Quill crowded behind Wren, whispering among themselves until silence fell with the elevator's descent. When the doors opened, the world below the academy didn't look like training grounds. It looked like something else, something hidden. Banks of monitors lined the walls of a bunker that wasn't supposed to exist. Tactical maps pulsed across massive displays, scattered with glowing indicators. Streams of code and biometric data scrolled across others. It was more than a command center. It was surveillance on a global scale. Stepped forward, his voice measured, clinical. Welcome to the true heart of Project Sleeper. The words landed heavy, like a verdict. Wren's stomach twisted. Her squad looked at one another, but no one spoke. The silence demanded answers. Gestured and a holographic display flickered to life, revealing the outline of a human brain. Neural pathways glowed like constellations. 8 years ago, he began, the military authorized a revolutionary program. Not weapons, not machines, soldiers. His eyes shifted briefly to Wren. Soldiers like specialists. Her breath caught. Continued. We developed neural reconfiguration protocols, enhanced synaptic pathways for combat tactics strategy, all locked behind psychological barriers accessible only by activation phrases. In their dormant state, these recruits appeared ordinary, unremarkable, sometimes even failures, but upon activation, he gestured toward her. They became the most elite operators in existence. Wren felt the words like chains tightening around her. She remembered the mocking laughter of her squad, the failed drills, the clumsy attempts that had defined her entire career. Not weakness, suppression. You did this to me. Her voice was low, sharp, vibrating with a fury she hadn't known she carried. Didn't flinch, you volunteered. The hologram shifted, now displaying an old personnel file. Wren's younger self stared back from the projection, confident, smiling, filled with purpose. She barely recognized her. You believed you were entering an advanced training program, said. You signed the paperwork. You agreed to neural enhancement. I didn't agree to be broken." Her voice cracked, the steel in it faltered. Tempest's eyes narrowed at the general. "You suppressed her abilities. You let her believe she was inadequate." "Perfect cover," countered. "No one suspects the soldier who struggles." While her analytical mind gathered intelligence, her combat instincts lay dormant, until they were needed. Ren staggered back, pressing a hand to the console for balance. Memories came in fragments, labs disguised as training, subliminal cues hidden in lectures, whispered code embedded in sleep studies. All of it painted as conditioning. "You stole my life," she whispered. His voice hardened. "We preserved your life. We made you more than human. And now, thanks to you, the project has survived its first breach." Stepped forward, her voice sharp. "The attackers knew about this. They called it Project Sleeper." Nodded grimly. "Intelligence leaks. A rival faction has discovered the program. They came not to kill but to capture, to turn our assets against us." Ren's blood ran cold. Assets. Quill, ever the analyst, pieced it together. That woman, she mentioned dozens more. Hesitated, then admitted. There are 37 sleeper agents currently embedded across the globe. Soldiers positioned strategically, unaware of what they truly are. A phrase away from becoming operatives. Ren's voice dropped to a whisper, "Unaware just like me." The room spun. She gripped the console, her fingernails biting the edge. "If they fall into enemy hands," Tempest pressed, "they become weapons pointed back at us." His jaw tightened. "Exactly, that's why this program matters." Ren snapped her gaze toward him, fire sparking in her chest. "This program destroyed me. Do you have any idea what it feels like to wake up every day convinced you're a failure? To bleed yourself dry trying to meet standards your own body is programmed to betray? Do you know what that does to someone?" Her voice broke, the words raw, trembling. For a heartbeat, no one spoke, even looked unsettled. Tempest placed her good hand gently on Ren's arm. "You're not broken," she said softly. "You're surviving." Ren met her eyes, but the comfort only deepened her ache. Usually smug, lowered his head. His voice was quiet, heavy. "All those times we mocked you, all the times I called you useless, that was your cover." Ren swallowed hard. "A cover I didn't even know I was living." The words cut him deeper than any reprimand could. Cleared his throat, forcing control back into the room. "The enemy calls themselves Helios. They've identified at least a dozen sleeper agents. They will move to extract them, within days." "And you want me to stop them," Ren said. "It wasn't a question." "You're unique," admitted. "The others, when activated, lose themselves completely. The operator takes over, the original consciousness erased until deactivation. But you," his gaze sharpened, "you retained control, both sides integrated. We don't know why, that makes you invaluable." Ren's fists clenched. She hated him, hated what he represented. Yet beneath the hatred a terrible truth burned: he was right. Tempest straightened, her presence radiating quiet authority. "General, this project violates every ethical standard we have. These cadets never consented to become weapons." "They volunteered," snapped. "Under false pretenses," she countered. "Consent without truth isn't consent at all." Ren raised a trembling hand, silencing them both. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "Enough. The question isn't what you did, it's what happens now." Studied her. "What do you propose, specialist?" Ren glanced at the monitors, the glowing indicators representing lives like hers, soldiers scattered across continents, each unknowingly carrying a ticking secret in their minds. She thought of the woman's words, dozens more. "I find them," Ren said quietly, "before Helios does." Silence answered first, then nodded slowly, almost like he'd expected it. "Then you'll need a team, and you already have one." Squad Delta stiffened. Their eyes flickered between each other, then back to her. Ren's throat tightened. These were the same voices that had laughed when she stumbled, the same squad that had dismissed her. Now, suddenly, they were supposed to follow her. "After everything," she asked, her voice raw. "After the ridicule, the contempt, you'll follow me." Stepped forward. No smirk, no arrogance, only sincerity. "After what I saw today, I'd be honored." And Quill nodded, silent but resolute. For the first time, Wren didn't feel small standing among them. She felt something else, something dangerous, something alive. Tapped a control and a new display lit up. A soldier's file, a name glowing at the top. Captain. "First target," said. "Forward operating base Meridian. Intelligence suggests Helios agents are already moving to capture him." Wren studied the file. Like her, his record painted a picture of mediocrity. Like her, his failures were deliberate. Unlike her, if activated, his original self would vanish entirely. Her pulse quickened. If Helios got to him first. She looked back at the glowing map of sleeper assets. 37 names, 37 lives stolen. Her voice was steady, resolved. "Then we move now." His lips curved in something like approval. "Designation, wake-up call. Mission, locate and secure sleeper assets before Helios does. You're in command, specialist." The words struck her like a weight she wasn't sure she could carry. Commander, leader, operative, weapon. She didn't know which one she was anymore. But she knew one thing. She would not let another soldier live the lie she had endured. How do you lead a squad that once laughed at your every mistake? The air outside the academy felt sharper, heavier. For months, Wren had been confined within its walls, defined by her failures. Now the open world stretched before her, vast and uncertain. A transport plane waited at the tarmac, its engines already whining. Squad Delta moved around her, checking gear, loading supplies, falling into patterns they had rehearsed countless times before. But the patterns felt different now. Wren adjusted the straps of her vest with calm precision. No fumbling, no trembling fingers. Each buckle, each weapon check, each piece of equipment slid into place as if her body had finally remembered something long forgotten. Watched her quietly, his usual smirk absent. Double-checked her ammo, side-eyeing Wren with curiosity she didn't bother to mask. Quill scribbled notes on his tablet, his analytical mind already running through probabilities. Tempest approached, her arm still bound in a sling. She looked Wren in the eye, her gaze steady. "You don't have to carry the weight of this alone." Wren almost laughed. "Almost. I've carried the weight of failure for years. This feels lighter." But even as she said it, the truth coiled inside her. This wasn't lighter. It was heavier in ways she hadn't yet admitted. Appeared at the base of the ramp, his voice clipped and commanding. "Your mission is to secure Captain. Intelligence suggests Helios operatives are embedded near Meridian already. If they reach him first, he will be activated or extracted." Wren studied his file again in her mind. His record mirrored hers. Subpar performance, marginal field scores, a soldier easily overlooked, but beneath the cover he was like her, sleeper, waiting. "Do we have the activation phrase?" Wren asked. Hesitated. "Yes, but use it only if necessary. Once activated, his original consciousness will be suppressed completely. He will become an operator, nothing more." Wren's stomach twisted. She thought of herself, the duality tearing through her since heliotrope had awakened her. "Why am I still here? Why do I still feel like me when they would?" "We'll bring him back," Wren said, whole. His eyes lingered on her, calculating. "If anyone can, it's you." The ramp closed. The engines roared. The world of the academy shrank behind them as the plane cut into the night sky. For a while silence ruled the cabin. Wren sat across from her squad, their faces pale in the dim light. She could feel their unease, at the mission, at her, at everything they had learned. Finally broke it. "You move like Tier 1. The way you cleared that atrium, I've only seen operators pull that off." Wren didn't answer. She wasn't sure how. "You don't even know how you're doing it, do you?" Pressed. Wren's jaw tightened. I know enough to keep us alive." Quill leaned forward, his tone less accusatory, more searching. "The woman with the scar called you a sleeper agent. She said there were dozens more. That means anyone out there, any officer could be one of you. How do we know who to trust?" Ren met his gaze evenly. "You don't. That's why you follow me." Her words dropped heavy in the cramped space. For once, no one argued. The plane touched down at a forward airstrip near Meridian. The base was a sprawl of canvas tents, watchtowers, and dirt-streaked vehicles, all under the pale wash of floodlights. The air smelled of oil and dust, tinged with the faint copper of weapon metal. They were met by Lieutenant, a wiry officer whose fatigue-lined face betrayed weeks of sleepless nights. "You're here for," he said without preamble. "Yes," Ren replied. "He's here, but," his voice dropped, "something off. He's been different, distracted, forgetful, even like he's walking in two lives." Ren's chest tightened. She knew that feeling too well. "Where is he now?" "In the barracks." They moved quickly, weaving through tents and personnel. Meridian buzzed with nervous energy, soldiers shifting uneasily, guards watching shadows too long, as though the enemy wasn't just outside the wire but already inside. Ren pushed into the dimly lit barracks. Captain sat on his bunk, staring at nothing. His rifle leaned untouched against the wall. His hands trembled faintly in his lap. He looked up as they entered, confusion flickering across his face. "Specialist." Ren froze. He knew her name. "I've seen you," said slowly, "in my dreams." The squad stiffened. His hand brushed his weapon instinctively. Ren stepped forward carefully, her voice soft. "You're not imagining it. Something has been done to us, to both of us." His eyes sharpened. "The voices, the numbers, I thought I was losing my mind." "No," Ren said. "You're not. You're like me." Before he could answer, the floodlights outside shattered. Gunfire erupted, sharp and chaotic. "Contact," someone shouted from the watchtowers. "North perimeter." Squad Delta sprang into motion, secured the entrance. Quill relayed coordinates to nearby patrols, took position by the window, returning fire. Ren stayed with her instincts screaming. This wasn't a random attack. Helios had come. A shadow moved in the doorway, swift and silent. Ren lunged before thought could intervene, pulling to the floor just as a spray of bullets tore through the bunk where he'd been sitting. Figures in unmarked gear stormed the barracks, their movements precise, their weapons raised. Ren's vision shifted, the world slowing, clarity blooming once more. She counted angles, trajectories, enemy positions. Her body moved, shots cracked, 2 enemies down before they crossed the threshold. A third collapsed under fire. But one slipped through, fast, rolling low, a device in his hand. Ren recognized it instantly. Neural trigger. "No," she shouted, but the word was drowned by the hiss of activation. His body stiffened. His eyes went glassy, then sharp, too sharp. His posture shifted, hands steady, trembling, gone. He rose with mechanical grace, his movements perfect, his expression empty. Ren's heart sank. Wasn't there any more? The operator was. He disarmed in a blur, moving with a speed that outmatched them all. Quill shouted coordinates but anticipated them, striking before the words left his lips. Tried to engage, but's counterattack was brutal, efficient. Ren stepped into his path, her voice breaking. "Listen to me. You're not just this. You're more. Fight it." His eyes flickered, just for a second, a tremor in the mask. But then the override deepened. His voice was flat, alien. "Mission parameters, extraction." He turned his weapon on her. Ren's pulse thundered. She remembered the woman's words, dozens more. This was what it meant. This was the war they were walking into. And now she had to make a choice. Shoot him, save her squad, lose him forever. Or find another way. Her finger hovered on the trigger, breath shallow. Inside, 2 halves of her ward, the soldier trained for survival and the human clinging to hope. "Sometimes," she whispered, "dignity doesn't speak. It fights to stay." And she stepped forward into the line of fire. What do you do when the person you're trying to save is holding a rifle to your chest? The barracks was chaos. Gunfire shredded bunks, glass shattered, shouts tangled with the roar of automatic fire. Helios operatives poured in, their gear unmarked, their movements sharp and professional. Squad Delta fought hard, kicking an attacker back through the doorway, laying down controlled bursts, Quill barking coordinates into comms. But the real threat stood in the center of the room. Captain, or what had been. His posture was no longer uncertain, no longer weighed down by doubt. His hands were steady, his stance lethal. His eyes were hollow windows reflecting a soldier who no longer recognized them. And his rifle was aimed at Ren. "Stand down," his voice commanded, flat, mechanical, devoid of hesitation. "Mission parameters, extraction." Ren's pulse thundered, but her voice stayed low, steady. "You know me. You said you dreamed of me. That wasn't conditioning, that was you." For a fraction of a second his weapon wavered, just a breath. Then his gaze hardened again. "You are obstruction. Terminate obstruction." The shot never came. Slammed into from the side, forcing the barrel away. The weapon discharged, punching holes into the ceiling instead of Ren's chest. Moved like water, twisting, flipping onto the floor with terrifying strength. "Don't kill him," Ren shouted as raised her sidearm. "That's not the mission." But what was the mission anymore? Save, secure him, or stop him. Another Helios operative stormed in, weapon raised. Ren pivoted, fired once, and he dropped. Her clarity surged again, vision narrowing into crystalline focus. Enemy positions mapped themselves in her mind, 5 on the perimeter, 2 breaching left flank, 1 scaling the window. She relayed the information instinctively. "Quill, cover left window, on me." They followed without hesitation, not because she commanded, because she was right. Every call was precise, life-saving. But was still inside, moving with inhuman grace, countering every attempt to subdue him. He disarmed with a brutal strike, kicked into a wall and advanced again on Ren. She could match him now, she knew it. The same programming burned in her veins. Every move he made she anticipated, countered. They fought in a blur of strikes and counters, 2 operatives carved from the same hidden mold. But Ren didn't want to win, she wanted him back. She gasped between blows, her forearm locked against his in a clash of strength. "This isn't who you are." "This is who I was made to be," he hissed, his tone alien, drilled deep by programming. "No," Ren spat, pushing back with everything she had. "This is what they did to you. You're still in there, fight it." His fist slammed into her ribs, knocking the air from her lungs. Pain seared, but she stayed upright. She had to. Behind them the firefight raged. Dropped another Helios operative with surgical precision. Quill shouted for reinforcements. Battered but unbroken, staggered back to his feet, his weapon steady. Ren grappled with, their faces inches apart. His eyes flickered again, that faint tremor in the mask. He whispered, voice cracking for the briefest instant. "I'm not allowed." Something inside her broke at those words. She saw herself months ago, fumbling, failing, convinced she wasn't allowed to succeed. Not by lack of will, but by design. She lowered her weapon. Barked in shock, "What are you doing?" She stood bare, ribs aching, arms at her sides. "If I fight you like them, I lose you. If I stand here as me, maybe you'll remember." His weapon lifted, barrel inches from her chest. His finger tightened on the trigger. Every instinct screamed to move, to fight, to survive. But she stayed. "I know what it feels like," she whispered. "To wake up every day thinking you're worthless. To bleed trying to prove yourself while everyone laughs. But that wasn't failure. That was suppression. They made you think you were nothing, so no one would ever suspect you were everything." His hand trembled, his breath hitched. "Helios doesn't own you," Ren pressed. Neither does you do, you're still you. Don't let them take that. For a heartbeat, silence crushed the chaos. Even the gunfire outside seemed distant. His finger hovered, his eyes flickered. Then the override reasserted, his body jerking as though pulled by invisible strings. Mission parameters. Ren lunged, slamming her hand against his chest. Not to strike, to connect. Fight it. Staggered, eyes wide, caught between commands and conscience. His rifle clattered to the floor. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head as if trying to tear the programming out. His voice fractured, torn between two selves. Mission, obstruction. Ren crouched, gripping his shoulders. You're not their asset, you're ours, you're mine, you're say it. His breath came ragged, his voice breaking. I am. And with that, the override shattered. He collapsed against her, shuddering, human again. But there was no time for relief. The barracks wall blew inward, debris showering across the floor. Smoke filled the air as a new wave of Helios operatives stormed in, heavier armed, faster, ruthless. Fall back, shouted. No, Ren said, standing, pulling behind her. Her voice was steel. We hold. The squad tightened formation. His rifle barked sharp bursts. Quill rerouted comms for air support. His fire was controlled fury. And Ren. Ren was everything they'd mocked her for not being. Swift, precise, relentless. She fought with both halves, the operator's perfection and the human's defiance. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving the programming. She was wielding it. By the time reinforcements arrived, the barracks was wreckage. Helios retreated into the night, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Ren stood in the center, chest heaving, ribs throbbing, her squad around her battered, bleeding but alive. Leaned against the wall, pale, trembling but free. His eyes found hers, raw with gratitude. You didn't give up on me. She met his gaze, voice soft but fierce. I couldn't, because if I gave up on you, it would mean giving up on myself. Outside, the base burned. Inside, Ren realized something terrifying. She could fight the programming. She could resist the commands. She could save them. But if Helios knew that, they would never stop hunting her. What do you do when victory feels more like a warning than a triumph? Smoke clung to the night sky above forward operating base Meridian, a dark veil against the pale wash of floodlights. The air reeked of gunpowder, oil, and blood. The ground was littered with shattered glass, torn sandbags, and shell casings that glowed faintly in the firelight. Ren stood amid the wreckage of the barracks, her body aching, her ribs still sore from blows. Around her, the base worked in hurried silence, medics rushing to the wounded, engineers repairing defenses, soldiers carrying away the dead beneath thin gray tarps. The firefight was over, but the war inside her was. Sat on a cot nearby, his hands trembling, eyes unfocused. He looked smaller than he had minutes ago when the operator had overtaken him. Now, stripped of the override, he was just a man again, fragile, afraid. Ren approached slowly. He glanced up, his expression heavy with guilt. I tried to kill you. You didn't, she said softly. I wanted to, he whispered, his voice cracked on the words. For a moment I wasn't me, I was, he broke off, clutching his head, something else. Ren crouched beside him, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. That's not who you are, that's what they did to you, what they tried to do to me, but you're still here, you fought it. His eyes met hers, wet and searching. How did you resist? I couldn't stop it, not until you reached me. Ren swallowed. She didn't have the answer. She'd been asking herself the same question since heliotrope awakened her. Why was she different? Why was she still herself when others were? Behind them, leaned against a wall, arms crossed, watching silently, was cleaning her rifle with sharp, methodical movements. Quill hunched over his tablet, already sifting through captured Helios comms. The squad had changed, not just in the way they looked at Ren, but in the way they looked at each other. The mocking camaraderie of training was gone. What remained was something harder, heavier, respect forged under fire. Commander Tempest arrived, her arms still bound in a sling but her presence unshaken. She scanned the barracks, her eyes lingering on Wren. "You saved him." Wren rose slowly. "Barely." "Barely is sometimes enough," Tempest replied. Entered moments later, flanked by security personnel. His uniform was spotless, his demeanor composed, but his eyes flicked across the carnage with a calculation that made Wren's stomach knot. He wasn't here to grieve. He was here to measure. "How many captured?" he asked. "7," Quill reported without looking up. "All Helios operatives. We've isolated them in the holding tents." Nodded once. "Good, we'll interrogate immediately." Wren bristled. They used an override phrase on Sunflower. It worked almost. Where did they get that? That shouldn't even exist. His jaw tightened, but before he could answer, one of the prisoners was dragged in. Mask torn off, face bruised, eyes burning with defiance. Tempest motioned to the guards. "Restrain him." The operative laughed bitterly, spitting blood onto the dirt. "Doesn't matter what you do. We already know your secrets." Wren stepped forward, her voice low, steady. "Then tell me, who gave you the override?" The operative's grin widened. "One of your own." Silence dropped like a hammer. Wren's chest tightened. "You're lying." "Am I?" His voice dripped with smug certainty. "How else would we know the phrases? How else would we know the locations of sleeper assets? Someone inside your program wants this war as much as we do." Bristled, his hand twitching toward his weapon. "Name them." The operative only smiled wider. "You'll find out soon enough, when one of your own turns a rifle on you." Wren's pulse raced. For weeks she'd been struggling with who she was. Now she had to wonder if someone among them, someone she trusted, was like her but not resisting, someone already compromised. Snapped his fingers. Guards dragged the operative back toward the tents. His laughter echoed long after he was gone. Tempest turned sharply to the general. "You said override protocols were theoretical, never implemented. Was that another lie?" His voice was clipped, defensive. "They were theoretical. If Helios has them, it means someone leaked classified data, someone with access." Wren's voice cut through the argument. "Then there's a mole." The word hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Squad Delta shifted uneasily. Quill's eyes narrowed, calculating probabilities. His jaw clenched. Fists tightened. Trust cracked under the weight of suspicion. Wren's voice steadied, though her stomach churned. "We need to know who it is, before more sleepers are compromised." Studied her, his eyes sharp. "And you think you can find them?" She met his gaze without flinching. "I don't think I know." For the next hours, Wren immersed herself in interrogation. One by one, the captured Helios operatives were questioned, pressed, broken down. She didn't use threats or force. She used clarity, precision. The same sharpness that guided her in battle now cut through deception. They yielded fragments, code names, dead drops, vague references to someone called the architect. "The architect designs the keys," one whispered, trembling. "The phrases, the suppressions. Without them, none of this exists." Wren's blood ran cold. Someone had built the very words that turned them on and off. Someone still had that power. She stepped out of the tent, the desert night cold against her skin. Her squad waited in silence. "Anything?" asked. Wren's voice was quiet, heavy. "The mole isn't just leaking. They're designing. Every phrase, every lock, every override. They call them the architect." His eyes darkened. "And they're one of ours." Wren nodded slowly. "Which means the enemy doesn't just know us. They own part of us." The squad fell silent again. Around them, the base groaned with the weight of survival. Wounded carried past, smoke curling from shattered walls. But for Wren, the real war wasn't outside the wire anymore. It was inside. Inside the program. Inside the people she was supposed to trust. inside herself. Because if one mole could design the keys, what if she wasn't as free as she thought? The thought sliced deeper than any wound. She turned to, still pale, still trembling. His eyes searched hers, raw with fear. "If they try again," he whispered, "I won't stop it, I can't." Ren's hand found his shoulder, steady, grounding. "Then I'll stop it for you, because I'm not just their weapon, and neither are you." But even as she said it, another truth echoed in the back of her mind. If the architect had built her lock, they could still build her cage. What happens when the traitor you're hunting could be standing right beside you? The desert night stretched wide and merciless, stars sharp against black sky. A convoy of armored transports cut across the sand, headlights dimmed, engines low. Inside the lead vehicle, Ren sat in silence, the hum of the engine matching the pulse in her chest. They were heading into Helios-controlled territory, not for extraction, not for rescue, for answers. The architect. Every road in her mind bent toward that name. Whoever they were, they had designed the keys to her existence, the locks, the phrases, the suppression, the override. Without the architect, Project Sleeper was just theory. With them, it was war. Sat opposite her, his weapon across his knees, eyes fixed on her with a mixture of respect and unease. Checked her sidearm for the third time, jaw tight. Quill tapped at his tablet, running silent scans, though his fingers betrayed nervous energy. Sat beside Ren, pale but steadier than before, still carrying the weight of his near loss of self. Tempest rode in the next vehicle, her sling replaced with a tactical brace. She had insisted on coming despite her wound. Ren suspected it wasn't trust that drove her, it was duty and suspicion. Had not come. His absence pressed like a shadow over the mission. He had given them coordinates, intelligence drawn from interrogation. A facility in the desert, abandoned in appearance but humming with signals beneath the sand. The supposed location of the architect. But was it truth or bait? Ren's gut twisted. The convoy halted at the edge of a canyon. The moonlight cut deep shadows into the rock walls. Sand hissed under boots as they dismounted, moving into formation. Quill pulled up a holographic overlay. Facility entrance is concealed here, 20 meters down under camouflage netting. Scanned the ridge with his scope. Too quiet. If Helios controls this, they'd have scouts. Muttered, "Unless they want us to walk right in." Ren felt it too, the hum of wrongness, the taste of a trap. But turning back wasn't an option. "Formation," she ordered. "Quill on overwatch, flank with me, stays center." They moved in silence, boots crunching lightly on stone. The canyon walls pressed close, shadows deepening. Ren's senses sharpened again, every angle, every movement, every possible ambush mapped in her mind. At the base of the ridge, Quill located the entrance, a steel hatch disguised under sand-streaked netting. He crouched, running diagnostics, locked with biometric encryption, military grade. "Not Helios," murmured. "Project Sleeper," Ren said. The words felt heavy on her tongue. She pressed her palm against the panel, for a moment nothing. Then the hatch clicked, unlocking. Her chest tightened. "Why you?" asked quietly. Ren didn't answer. She wasn't sure she could. The hatch opened with a hiss. Stale air swept out, carrying the scent of metal and dust. They descended into darkness, the walls narrowing into a tunnel of reinforced steel. The deeper they went, the louder the hum became, machinery, servers, life hidden underground. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Banks of monitors lined the walls, glowing with streams of data, brainwave patterns, neural maps, tactical overlays. Dozens of silhouettes moved among them, technicians in unmarked uniforms. And at the center, elevated on a platform of steel and glass, stood a figure in a long coat. The architect. Their face was obscured by shadows, but their voice cut clear across the chamber, amplified by the hum of machinery. "Welcome home, specialist." The words froze her blood. His weapon snapped up, steadied his aim. Quill's fingers flew across his tablet, scanning signals. Ren stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Who are you?" The architect's chuckle was low, knowing. "The better question is, who are you, Ren?" They descended the steps, their face finally visible in the glow. Not a stranger. A woman with sharp eyes, lines carved deep by years of command. "Commander Tempest." Gasps tore from Squad Delta, cursed under her breath. His grip tightened on his rifle. Ren's world tilted. No. Tempest, the Tempest who had led them, bled with them, stood in the center of the chamber, her wounded arm now steady, her presence commanding. "Yes, I am the architect." Ren staggered back, betrayal slicing deeper than any wound. You made me this." "I made you possible," Tempest replied. Her voice carried no shame, only conviction. "Without me, you would still be fumbling in the dirt, wasting your brilliance. I unlocked what you were meant to be." "You lied," Ren whispered. "Every drill, every failure, you watched me suffer, you watched them mock me." Tempest's eyes softened briefly. "Because it was the only way to protect you, to protect the project. If they had known your strength, Helios would have taken you years ago. You survived because you were overlooked." Spat the words. "That's not protection, that's cruelty." Tempest's gaze flicked to him, unimpressed. It kept her alive, and it worked. Ren's fists clenched. "And Sunflower, the override, you gave them that too." Tempest's jaw tightened. "I gave them nothing, there is another. Helios has infiltrators, yes, but don't confuse me with them. I built the locks, I never handed out the keys." The squad bristled, weapons trained. The room felt like a single spark could ignite it into violence. Stepped forward, his voice hoarse. "Why us? Why any of us?" Tempest's eyes softened again, almost maternal. "Because you are the future. Wars will not be won by numbers but by precision. By soldiers who can think faster, fight sharper, act with perfect clarity. You are not mistakes. You are evolution." Ren's voice shook with fury. "You turned us into experiments, into prisoners inside our own minds." Tempest looked at her, calm, unyielding. "And yet you resisted. You are proof that the system can work not as suppression, not as control, but as integration. You are more than soldier or sleeper. You are both." Ren's breath came ragged. Betrayal warred with the smallest ember of truth. Was Tempest her enemy or her creator? Before she could answer, alarms blared. Red lights washed over the chamber. Quill's tablet flashed warnings. "Helios Strike Force inbound," he shouted. "They've found this facility." Tempest's expression didn't change. "Then we hold." "Barked with you, after everything you've done." Tempest met her glare. "With me or you die here." Ren's heart pounded. The walls of trust had already cracked. Now they shattered. The enemy was at the gates, but the real question was inside the room. Was the architect truly on their side, or playing a deeper game? What do you do when the person you trusted least holds the key to your survival? The chamber shook as explosions thundered above, dust sifting down from the steel rafters. Red warning lights strobed across rows of monitors, bathing Tempest's face in flashes of blood-colored light. "Helios breach confirmed," Quill shouted, his tablet alive with warning signals. "Multiple insertion points, north and east access tunnels. They'll be here in minutes." Raised his rifle, voice sharp with fury. "We should put a bullet in her before they arrive. Save ourselves the trouble." His jaw tightened. "And leave her tech for Helios to scoop up. Brilliant." Tempest didn't flinch. Her calm unnerved them more than the alarms. "You won't survive this without me. You know it." Ren stood frozen, the walls of her mind crashing inward. Commander Tempest, the woman who had barked at her every failure, who had cut her down in front of her squad, who had stood bleeding in that atrium shouting heliotrope, was also the architect who had designed the very locks in her brain. Her voice cracked, raw with betrayal. "You lied to me every single day." Tempest's eyes softened. Because the truth would have destroyed you before you were ready. Do you understand, Ren? You weren't meant to break. You were meant to endure until you became something more. The floor trembled with another blast. The chamber doors shuddered, reinforced steel groaning against the assault outside. Hissed through his teeth. We're wasting time. Decide, do we fight alongside her or do we put her down before Helios breaks through? Every gaze turned to Ren, her squad, even Tempest who stood silent waiting. Her chest ached with the weight of it. Trusting Tempest felt like surrender. Rejecting her felt like suicide. For a long, trembling moment, Ren said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice low but steady. Weapons up, defensive perimeter. No one leaves this chamber alive unless we hold. Cursed under his breath but obeyed, moving to cover the eastern entry. Took the west flank. Quill interfaced with the security grid, rerouting remaining power to the auto turrets. Stayed close to Ren, his rifle steady despite the tremor in his hands. Tempest moved with quiet authority, positioning herself at the central console. They'll override the locks in under 3 minutes. When they breach, you fall back to the secondary line. You anchor the push. Ren's jaw clenched. Don't order me. Tempest's gaze flicked to her, not angry but almost proud. Then lead me. The chamber doors blew inward. The first wave of Helios stormed through, black-clad figures with visors gleaming, weapons spitting fire. The air erupted in chaos. Ren dropped 3 before the first reached cover. His rifle barked in sharp bursts, his heavier fire chewing through the advancing line. Quill triggered the turrets, steel cannons rotated, tearing swaths through the attackers. But Helios kept coming. Grenades rolled across the floor, detonating in concussive blasts that rattled the steel plating. Shrapnel tore across Ren's arm, searing pain white-hot, but she didn't stop. Her clarity surged again, the world slowing into angles and trajectories. Every enemy movement unfolded before her as though scripted. She moved like a shadow through fire, cutting down attackers with ruthless precision. Yet through it all, doubt gnawed at her. Was this clarity hers or Tempest's design? A Helios soldier lunged, knife flashing. Ren, twisted, drove him into the console. Sparks exploded as equipment fried. The soldier collapsed, lifeless. Secondary wave, Quill shouted. 30 inbound, breaching west tunnel. Cursed, slamming a fresh mag into her rifle. We won't hold this line. Tempest's voice cut through the chaos. Ren turned, chest heaving. What? Tempest's hand flew across the console, revealing a sequence of commands glowing crimson on the monitors. Helios can't have this facility. If they breach the core, everything here, every record, every lock, every phrase will become theirs. That destroys it all. Barked over the gunfire, then hit it. But Tempest's eyes locked on Ren. Only you can. Biometric encryption, you have to choose. Ren's blood ran cold. If she triggered the chamber would collapse, burying Helios operatives in fire and steel, but burying them too. She and her squad, even Tempest. Her voice shook. You want me to kill us all? Tempest's gaze was steady. I want you to decide what survives. The doors buckled again, new waves of enemies pressing in. Ren's squad shouted for orders, fighting to hold the line. Grabbed her arm, his eyes burning with desperate clarity. If they get this tech, if they get the phrases, we're all lost. You know that. Her lungs burned, her heart pounded. She saw flashes, her months of failure, Tempest's cold corrections, scorns, laughter. She saw on his knees, torn between himself and the operator inside. She saw herself, trembling in a bunk at night, ink-stained palms marked by numbers she didn't remember writing. All of it had led here. Ren pressed her hand to the console. The system scanned her biometrics, waiting for confirmation. Tempest's voice was soft now, almost maternal. Sometimes survival isn't victory. Sometimes sacrifice is the only way forward. Ren closed her eyes. For a breath, she felt both halves of herself, the operator, sharp and unyielding, and the human, fragile and aching. For the first time, they weren't at war. They were one. Her voice was steady. Then let it end here. She pressed the final command. The chamber roared. Alarms screamed as the core detonated. Light engulfed the room, white-hot and blinding. Steel buckled. The floor split. Helios operatives screamed as fire consumed them. Ren's last sight was her squad firing until the flames reached her, shouting defiance, Quill shielding his console. Eyes locked on hers with fierce trust. And Tempest, standing calm, her face lit by fire, whispering words Ren couldn't hear. Then everything collapsed. Silence. Darkness. When Ren awoke, it was to the faint drip of water and the distant crackle of fire. Pain seared through her body, but she was alive, somehow. She dragged herself from the rubble, coughing dust from her lungs. Around her, the facility was gone, twisted steel and collapsed stone, reduced to ruin. Helios's bodies lay scattered, broken. Her squad was there, battered but breathing. Leaning on, Quill coughing blood, pulling Ren to her feet with shaking hands. Tempest was gone. Buried or escaped, Ren didn't know. She looked at the ruins, at the cost, at the silence that followed. Her chest ached with both grief and grim relief. His voice was quiet beside her. You destroyed it all. Ren's gaze lingered on the rubble. Not all. She touched her chest, where her heartbeat still thundered. She was still here. Her squad was still here, and that meant the fight wasn't over. She turned to them, voice soft, steady, almost a whisper. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And in the silence of the desert night, with the ruins of the architect's chamber behind them, Ren walked forward, not as failure, not as asset, not as weapon, but as herself.